The LG G6 is LG's best smartphone to date, an easy claim to make given how it's LG's newest flagship, but LG did a lot of things right this iteration. LG did not skimp on the build materials like they did in previous flagships. The G6 features a metal and glass build that screams quality. It is reminiscent of the Galaxy S7 as it employs Gorilla Glass 5 on the rear, but strangely, only Gorilla Glass 3 on the front with aluminum on all four sides. There is no flex to this device, it is rock solid. The glass back does pick up fingerprints, but they aren't as apparent on the titanium variant as they are on the black variant. There is a fingerprint scanner on the rear that doubles as a power sleep on-off button that unlocks the phone pretty quickly and with ease, though I did have some trouble here and there. I wish LG would have included rear-facing volume controls to put it back in line with its earlier flagships and replace these side volume controls with a reprogrammable function button. I think that would be a pretty appealing feature. Alternatively, they could just make both sides of the phone completely clean. LG did make this phone IP68 water and dust proof, so it can be submerged in up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes and be completely fine. Therefore, you can use this phone in the rain and or by the pool or hot tub without fearing for its life. I tend to worry about trivial stuff like that, so having a feature like this saves me some anxiety and ultimately adds years to my life. The G6 is the first flagship of 2017 to give us a near bezel-less display. You'll see the top and bottom chins are very minimal as there are no physical buttons below the display. The side bezels are extremely thin as well. They don't curve like the Galaxy S8, so if you're concerned about not being able to effectively grip the curved display on the S8, or maybe you've tried a curved screened Samsung smartphone and you just didn't like how it felt, the G6 may appeal to you because it offers extremely thin bezels, but plenty of frame to hold onto the device. The display itself features Dolby Vision and HDR10, so content that uses these standards will look extra stunning on this panel. It's an LCD panel with a QHD resolution, and content does look incredible. When I first powered this phone on, I was in love with the display. However, since it is not AMOLED, it won't have quite the contrast as a Samsung panel, and it won't have any special battery saving features as all of the pixels will be lit up when it is in use. But it does get very bright and has incredible viewing angles. Color accuracy is also quite good, but not great. The most unusual aspect, however, is the 18:9 aspect ratio display. The display measures 5.7 inches, which sounds absolutely massive, but it's actually more comfortable in the hand than a traditional 16:9 display with the same or even smaller size. To give you an example, the 5.5-inch iPhone 7 Plus takes up a much bigger footprint in the hand, despite it having a smaller display. The G6's display is taller, which might make it a bit tougher to reach all four corners with one hand, but more content can be displayed in this format. Android 7.0 Nougat allows for app scaling, so apps can be properly scaled to fit this phone. But it's important to note that apps won't work flawlessly right out of the gate. Developers will need to properly incorporate the 18:9 aspect ratio into their apps so that you don't get any black bars or letterboxing, which is the case when watching YouTube videos, for example. But if we reflect on the display, its features, including the round corners that actually help the display survive accidental drops, and the premium build materials on the sides and back of the phone, well, you'll see that the G6's design was not an afterthought. It is built like a tank and it looks great. Now, if you're thinking about a color, I would recommend the black variant as it hides the very thin black border around the display. So I mentioned the phone runs Nougat, the latest version of Android. It runs the OS well, but it's far from being my top choice in the software department. LG has lightened up the skin quite a bit over the past year or so, but it's still relatively heavy, and doesn't feel as fluid as stock Android. App icons and settings icons are skinned. The stock launcher, which I forced myself to use for the past week or two, is a little bit janky. There is an app drawer, contrary to popular belief, and there are some themes. You can change the icons from original to rounded square, but you can't use icons from the Play Store unless you use a third-party launcher, unfortunately. In my professional opinion, I'd recommend the Nova or Apex launcher if you're heavily into customizing your phone, or at the very least, the Google Now launcher, as this stock launcher just isn't my favorite. The G6 features the Snapdragon 821 processor with 4GB of RAM, and I found it to run my apps pretty well. It's disappointing to see that it doesn't feature the 835 chipset, But that's the price LG decided to pay to get this phone on the market before the Galaxy S8. Multitasking is very smooth on this phone, and it's better than ever thanks to the extra tall display. Now, my favorite area of this smartphone has to be the cameras, but specifically the wide-angle sensor. LG has included two 13-megapixel cameras this time around. The main sensor features an f1.8 aperture lens with optical image stabilization, phase detection, autofocus. The wide-angle sensor features an f2.4 aperture. The main sensor is right on par with the iPhone 7, Galaxy S7, and other high-end smartphones. The low aperture allows for milky depth of field shots and detailed images even in low-light scenarios. The wide-angle sensor features a 125-degree angle that can capture some beautiful landscape images. I took this phone on several hikes in the gorge and was really impressed with what I captured. I was able to capture more of the great scale of the ravine that I was traversing. It's something that most main smartphone camera sensors just can't capture simply because they are too cropped. Now, with that said, there were some limitations. For example, I noticed some overexposure issues in the sky, and the wide-angle sensor doesn't work as well in low-light scenarios due to its f2.4 aperture. But the 13 megapixels are appreciated and much easier to work with than the 8 megapixel images captured with the LG G5's wide-angle sensor. The front-facing sensor is also fun to use. It features a 100-degree wide field of view that makes it easy to capture photos or videos at arm's length with your whole face in the frame. What frustrated me the most in my experience with the cameras was actually the software and the application itself. It's just a little bit slow and not consistent. I mean, sometimes it'll take several seconds to load up, other times it won't, and sometimes the app will load up, but it will take a few seconds for the option to switch cameras pops up. It's a problem that happens in other areas of this phone, but when it happens in this department, it's especially troublesome. Some other things to note: there are full manual controls, so you can control the ISO, white balance, etc. There's a focus tracking feature that will do a pretty good job tracking subjects in motion, ensuring that they will stay in focus. The G6 has a 3300 mAh battery that puts it right between the S8 and S8 Plus in terms of battery capacity. I've used this phone for over a month as my daily driver, and I found it to last me throughout the day on a single charge. But there were some days where I'd have to top it off halfway through the day just for peace of mind. And in terms of screen on time, I was able to get between 4 to 5 hours, which is just average for a smartphone. The good news though is that it has fast charging as well as wireless charging. There is a bottom facing speaker and it sounds surprisingly crisp and pungent, but it's bottom facing and it often gets covered up from my hand. The least LG could have done was incorporate a loudspeaker in the call speaker, similar to what Apple has done in the iPhone 7, but for being a bottom-facing speaker, it's honestly not that bad. So with that said, it's easy to dismiss the G6 for the Galaxy S8, which is newer and supported by an even larger company. But the G6 shouldn't be so easily dismissed. At the end of the day, what separates the two devices are the little things, which actually may not be that little for some people. The G6 has a near bezel-less display that doesn't sacrifice grip ability. It features an impressive wide-angle camera sensor, is Dolby Vision and HDR10 compliant, and has a slightly easier on-the-wallet price of about $650, depending on your carrier. The S8 is about $100 more, give or take, once again, depending on your carrier. It's going to be tough to tell how it stacks up to the competition until I get the competition in my hands and put it up against this device, but I will say the G6 makes me feel optimistic about this year's flagship smartphones. The G6 is LG's biggest smartphone upgrade in years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the device. With that said, guys, I'm BoHD from PhoneDog.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you right back here in the next one. See ya.